I'm into BDSM, bondage, shit like that. Some people might find that weird, but I'm sure those people are into things others might find strange, so let's not judge. I mention this because it's important to what happened. It gives you an idea of the kind of company I often keep and the kinds of places I often find myself. A BDSM club I'm a member of. That's where this all started. It was last weekend, around 1 a.m. Saturday night, or early Sunday if you want to be a dick about it. And I was just an observer for the night. In these kinds of places, one sees all manner of interesting attire. Lots of latex, zippers, chains. The man that summoned my attention and kicked this whole thing into gear was wearing a red latex suit that looked as if it were painted on. He said he'd seen me over the past year and that he knew I was serious about the life we'd chosen. He spoke cryptically, and everything about his tone and his choice of words made him seem like he was almost a BDSM purist. He commented on my piercing and tattoos, commending me for my commitment to body modification. I don't have anything extreme, just sleeves and a few piercings. He then told me I was ready to ascend to the future. Only now. It was really weird, but I like weird, so I was intrigued. I asked what he meant, and he said that the club in which we stood was a child's playhouse, a diet, sugar-free version of where I belonged. Mind you, he said this as we stood in a room featuring a woman suspended from the ground, hogtied, having her stomach and legs whipped by a cat o' nine tails. I've never particularly been into the most extreme stuff, but again, I was intrigued. Part of me thinks that I wasn't the person who was supposed to get the card, and that the man in the red latex suit mistook me for someone else. The man in the red latex suit handed me a business card that only gave an address and brief instructions. He told me to go join the upper echelon that night, because I'd earned the opportunity. When prompted, I was to give the night's password, Omega. I put the address into the GPS on my phone and found that it was located in the downtown area of the city in which I live. Had it been a rough neighborhood or in the middle of nowhere, I'd have given it more consideration. But the address was one of the largest buildings in the city, and for some reason that gave me a little peace of mind. I know that's foolish, but curiosity, as they say, killed the cat. I left the club and went to the building. I pulled into the parking garage and drove to the 4th level, per the instructions on the card. Once there, a valet opened my door and I was walked into the building and up to the 27th floor, the hallways of which were lined with people holding odd positions, like some kind of live art installation. I was taken into a part of the building that was cordoned off, and I saw what I thought was the aforementioned upper echelon, and it looked no different than where I had been half an hour prior, only better lit, which wasn't necessarily a good thing. There were maybe 60 people there, and they were all wearing the same sort of BDSM gear as the club I'd come from. Only these people had more body modification work done. I hadn't been asked for a password at that point, so I wasn't exactly sure why I'd been sent to this place as if it were a huge step up from what I'd been into for years. But then the lights dropped down, and 2 bowls filled with flammable liquid that sat upon waist-high pillars were set ablaze, and a man stepped between them. The man was wearing a normal business suit, but his face had all sorts of modifications done to it. From tattoos to piercings to all sorts of bumps to his nose, having had the skin between his nostrils removed, leaving simply a nose with a large hole. He gave a speech, welcoming everyone, inviting them to have a good time. But then he began talking about something more. This place is inclusive to all the most extreme, all the most imaginative, the most different. There should be a few of you in the crowd that were given a password. I invite those of you with that password to form a line at the elevator, and we will escort you to the main event of the evening. If tonight is your first night, you should consider yourself quite lucky. You're going to witness the final product of Miss Bennett's transformation. A light applause swept over the room. Password holders, please, to the elevator. I, along with about 15 other people, went to the elevators, and before we stepped into either of the 2 made available to us, we whispered the password to a large man in a suit. Up to the 30th floor we went, and stepping off the elevator, there were sheets on either side of us, creating a sort of makeshift hallway. We followed this path until we reached a large open area, at the back of which was an area hidden by yet another sheet. This one hung horizontally, almost like a stage with its curtain pulled. We were led into the open space, and for about 20 minutes, we all just kind of stood around, conversing amongst ourselves. I found someone else who was also there for the first time, and when we tried to ask others what we were going to be seeing, each person said that we just needed to see it for ourselves. One man did say that the last time they'd had one of these events was over a year prior, so he couldn't exactly be sure what they'd be seeing, but he had an idea.
You have all seen the most extreme of body modifications.
A voice boomed as the lights dimmed.
Holes where holes shouldn't be. Splits where things should be together. Things together where they should be apart. Well, we've got something new for you today. Something you've never seen. Something that will amaze you, as it amazed us to perform on the lovely, the brave Miss Bennett. In a few moments, you will be the first to see what will undoubtedly become the new rage in the body modification world. Welcome to the Stretching Party!
The person I'd met and I began trading guesses as to what could have been stretched on this Miss Bennett woman, both eagerly anticipating the reveal while also a bit nervous. I mean, I was into that lifestyle, but I didn't want to see anything too gruesome, and all signs were pointing to the fact that this was going to be more hardcore than I was used to. A short time later, a drum roll began emanating throughout the room.
Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves for a truly one-of-a-kind woman.
The same voice blared over a loudspeaker.
Over the course of 2.5 years, 19 procedures have been underwent to complete Miss Bennett's transformation. Well, you all don't want to hear me talk. I give you Phase 24 of the Stretching Party.
And with that, the curtain slowly drew back, revealing what was indeed a stage. The whole room got so quiet you'd have been able to hear a mouse skitter across the floor. Then came the footsteps. Clunky, uneven footsteps coming from somewhere behind and to the side of the stage. The steps got louder as they got closer to the stage. Then I saw the silhouette, and my heart sank to my stomach. A black figure, thinner than thin, standing tall. Tall, leaning hard to her left. 2 spotlights burst on, flooding the stage with light, as gasps and hushed whispers filled the viewing area. She limped towards the stage on legs that were twice as long as my own, with braces on them to keep her standing. Her torso was extended, with space each above and below her ribs that isn't there on the average person. As I said, she was hunched over, hard to the left, and her arms, which looked like they had 2 extra wrists each, hung down and swayed as she stutter-stepped out, aided by a man in a suit on either side of her. Her jaw had somehow been unhinged, making a deep underbite on her mouth that couldn't possibly close. A massive black hole on a face that was twice as long as it should have been. Her nostrils had been stretched to the size of $50, and her earlobes hung down to line up with her bottom lip. The men helped her to the center of the stage, and stood ready to catch her if she fell as she slowly, clumsily, awkwardly twirled around in a circle. As she did, I saw that there were several more notches in her bent spine than there would normally be. The voice came back over the loudspeaker.
Miss Bennett has dedicated herself to our community, becoming without question the most modified woman on the planet. We have added several titanium rods in her to act as new bones, and performed a number of skin grafts to cover the extra space. This woman is the 8th wonder of the world, and you all have the privilege of being the first to lay eyes upon her.
The room filled with a light clap from guests both amazed and horrified. A gurgle left the gaping maw of the now at least 9-foot tall Miss Bennett, as she stood on braced yet still wobbly legs. I looked around the room and found one couple aggressively kissing each other, another man masturbating, and others whispering to themselves and pointing up at the stretched woman. It was at that point that I decided I'd had enough. I said bye to the guy I had been talking to, who ignored my departure and just kept staring at the woman on stage with what I can only describe as rapacious eyes. As I tried to leave, I was stopped by 2 men in suits at the elevator door who made me sign a non-disclosure agreement form, which I did. They then accompanied me to the 4th floor parking garage, and only finally turned around as I began driving. I called the police immediately because, well, why wouldn't I? Nothing about what I had just seen seemed remotely legal or ethical. The police went to where the party was being held, getting there probably an hour after I'd left, and it was almost as if no one had been there at all. According to the police, the only evidence they found of anyone being there on either of the floors I'd been to was a few pieces of duct tape that had ostensibly been used to hold the sheets up, and a puddle of what looked to be drool on the stage area. The parking garage was empty and the police quickly lost interest, even suggesting I'd made the entire thing up. Then a few minutes ago I got a text.
You were not prepared for the upper echelon. You attempted to compromise our hard work. But we are a forgiving group, fortunately for you. Despite your transgressions, you will have the privilege, like Miss Bennett, of being the guest of honor for the next stretching party. See you soon.
I don't know what's going to happen, but I know that I should have heeded the warning of the curious cat.